I make this myself.
All right, folks. You guys ready? It is 5:02. Yeah, shut the door. Lock it in. You're in for the hour. Buckle your seatbelts. It is 5:02, Tuesday night, November 24th, 2015. Episode number 70. Thanks for coming tonight, guys. We got a great show for you lined up. It's all about online identity and reputation. It's called What is Your Identity, which is the polite way to ask, and who the hell are you is the implication, right? So I am going to attempt to lead a discussion around identity and reputation towards the end of the episode. We've got a few things to cover before that. This past weekend, we had Startup Weekend Bali 2015, and I was telling you guys that we're going to attempt to get a Bitcoin project into the mix. We successfully did that, and I'll give you the scoop on how all that went in just a minute. We're going to have Rick Shreve go through the price and some of the numbers, and then once we get to our identity section, we've got some kind of new terms to explore: core identity, personas, and primacy. So stick around. We got a great show. Let's kick things off. I'm just going to share my screen here so everyone at home can see what we see up on the screen. Turn the spotlight off. Everybody see it okay? Are we in focus? All right. So let's see here. We're coming to you live from Hubud. Hubud is a sponsor of sorts. They allow us to use their nice air-conditioned facility every week for free. I always mention this because if you find yourself in Bali on a Tuesday night and you're tuning in at home, I hope you'll join us. We do this every week, rain or shine, monkeys or no monkeys. We do it, and we usually start on time. It's amazing. But we really appreciate Hubud providing the space for us. When we're not together in person, we hang out in this online group called Bitcoins in Bali, and we encourage everybody to post your stories. And then when we do get together in person, we talk about the stories that people post here. If you have any questions during or after the show, we use Twitter, hashtag Bitcoins in Bali, yeah, if you got any questions or you want to communicate with us, please use Twitter with that hashtag. And local news, we've got Bitcoin 101 coming up on December 12th. We do this every month. What we're trying to do here in Ubud is build a Bitcoin economy, and this is like one of the cornerstones of what we do. We try and get people to walk around with their phone with Bitcoin on it and go to the many merchants around town that accept Bitcoin, try and get an economy started. It's part of what we're up to. All right, so let's talk about Startup Weekend. Startup Weekend 2015. Look at that handsome devil on the cover of E27. We didn't win. We didn't win. There was a mental health app that won, so I'm sure my friends are going to tune in and think that not be surprised that I was associated with some sort of mental health app. They probably think this is like the study. They're doing a study on me or something when they see my picture. But anyway, a really cool app won called Design My Day. It was about basically, it's interesting because there's a tie-in to tonight's topic. It's kind of like Facebook, but you have a pseudonymous profile, and it's to get help with, like, when you're depressed or you're feeling kind of lonely. They made the point that Facebook is kind of all about showing how cool your life is, and it's not really about getting support from your friends. So they wanted to create an app that was a little more friendly towards that. But if you're going to put yourself out there, you might not want to use your actual identity or your actual persona. And I thought that was kind of an interesting twist. People can be more open if they don't think that they're going to be judged in the real world based on the information they're sharing. So really cool app that won. And of course, the top 3 are entered into this startup battle, global startup battle, I think it's called. And our Bitcoin project came in 3rd place. So we will go on to the global startup battle, maybe. I just found out today that we have to like submit some sort of paperwork that I didn't know about. So I don't know. Stay tuned. We'll see what happens there. Anyway, you can check out Twitter Startup Weekend Bali 2015 if you want to see all the pictures and all the mayhem that was going on. There's lots of stuff there. And there is a picture of our happy team that came in 3rd place. You might notice this mustache here. This good looking fella. He was critical in making it all happen, and these guys all got on board after the pitch. There were 18 pitches that turned into 12 different teams. There are about 120 people there during the weekend. And of course, only 3 get to go on to the next level. So it was pretty exciting. I gave the final pitch and kind of blew it. There's only 3 minutes. You only get 3 minutes to talk about your entire idea. I got through about like maybe the first quarter of it, and they like rang the bell. It's kind of like you ever see those old vaudeville acts where they like have a cane and they like pull you off stage? That's kind of what happened. But I think it was for whatever I lacked in presentation skills, I think we overcame with the group dynamic, and the idea I think was really good once we fleshed it out.
What is it?
What was the idea? Good question. Thanks for asking. What we were called was Bitcoin for Wi-Fi, and the concept is that, well, when you're walking around.
About reputation for identity.
Well, this really doesn't have to do with reputation or identity, although it does a little bit. Here's the tie-in for this. When you walk around Ubud, you're in a fog of Wi-Fi signal, right? But you can't use it because they're all locked down. You got to go buy a juice, get the password, enter the password, re-enter the password, do it again. Yes, find out you get and then by the time you do connect, you realize that you've got like half a meg or 0.2 megs, and you can't do anything with your connection, and you got to go buy a juice at the next door neighbor, right? It's like, well, and the reason that you have that problem is because they have to lock down the network and then identify you as a customer before they give you access to the Wi-Fi signal. So the concept Bitcoin for Wi-Fi was, why not allow your phone to negotiate your Wi-Fi access on your behalf? Let's say that you're in the vicinity of 3 or 4 Wi-Fi signals, right? And several of them are plugged into our system. You can configure your phone so that it gets the best Wi-Fi access for the lowest price, right? It enables like a market mechanism where, if there's lots of Wi-Fi capacity, it's less expensive. But if it's the middle of the day and everybody's there at lunchtime, maybe the Wi-Fi is more expensive. And it would provide an extra stream of income for business owners. And then it would also give them incentive to increase their infrastructure, like buy more bandwidth, right? Because they're making money. If they're always maxed out at their bandwidth, maybe it makes sense for them to buy a second router.
So and this is like not buying a juice.
This is not buying a juice. This is just walking around.
Passing the juice.
Yeah, this is kind of the concept we came up with, where there was a single configuration screen, and you make the choice between cost, the trade-off between cost and speed. Yeah. And then there's a heat map that shows you where around Ubud you should go. Okay. And then it would, wherever you sat down, let me look at the next slide. So wherever you sat, wherever you ended up being, you'd have like a smart contract that found all of the Wi-Fi signals that are offering their Wi-Fi for sale. And then based on your criteria, it would negotiate the best price and simply connect. So you don't have to enter any passwords. You don't have to do anything. It just...
How do you pay per hour?
Well, we decided on a pay per megabit, like a pay for capacity, because the...
How long?
Well, it's over time as well. But as soon as you load up a page, and then if you're sitting there reading that page and not getting any more data, then you're fine, right?
Instead
So you
of
get-
waiting a page for 2 hours.
Right, so you-
for every page you renegotiate, the system renegotiates the price. How do you mean?
Well, we didn't work out all the details in 54 hours, but there is a mechanism, a time-based mechanism, where you can bill every 5 seconds. But I don't know how long the handshakes would take, and if that would be a poor user experience. That's kind of some of the due diligence. It's technically possible, but I'm not sure on the timing and the ease of use, etc. But it is feasible. In fact, we walked around all of Ubud and did basically validation, talk to tourists and find out, like, are you having problems with your Wi-Fi? 100% are having problems with their Wi-Fi. Would you be willing to pay for a better experience? About 95% said they would be willing to pay $1 a day. $1 a day or $1 an hour? $1 an hour, right? And so we did some cost analysis and figured out we could probably deliver for 50 cents an hour. And a lot of that money goes right back to the people offering the service. And then we'd have a little bit to run the Bitcoin for Wi-Fi business on top of that. So anyway, are you guys ready to be customers? You ready to download the app? It's not quite ready yet. Sorry about that. Okay, any questions on that? We had a ton of fun. I mean, it was awesome. You know, you get there on Friday night, and it's just this whirlwind until Sunday evening when you're up in front of the whole crowd.
Did you develop something like a prototype or?
We just screens,
Just screens.
just screen concepts. Yeah.
Concept. 54 hours is pretty tough.
Yeah, I guess so.
We came up with the app design and then the dashboard for the business owner. All right. Okay, so let's get into price. Take it away, Rick.
Thanks, Gary. Yeah, well, you know, it's been a fairly flat, not terribly volatile week. We've had our longest run of down volume, preponderating over up volume that we've seen in 30 days, just within the last few days. That said, in the last week, we've also tested 350 on 2 occasions, but neither time did it hold. And earlier today, we actually tested 316. So there's been a bit of downward pressure that just doesn't seem to stick either. So we sort of seem to be sort of in limbo right now. We had a bit of a spike in downward volume, as you can see on the right-hand side of the chart today. Is it going to keep going down? Well, who knows? Volatility is way off, and as we can see from the numbers of volume, you know, transactions, that you know, without the China market pushing it hard, there's just not a whole lot going on right now. It really is a testament to how much the China market moves the price around. Let's take a look in U.S. dollars. What are we sitting at? 322.89 at this moment. And again, a fairly uneventful week, but it has been interesting to see some of the highs and lows tested to see if there's any kind of support for them. Good time to buy? I don't know. What do we have here?
This is the 1 week view.
Oh, this is
This is what happened over the
yeah.
course of the last week.
Right. Okay, can we move on? Did you get volatility out today as well? We need
Yeah.
to look at that one.
Yeah.
So Bitcoin network data, you know, no real surprises here. We're still seeing over $8,000 of reward per block, which is nice. By the way, the market cap for Bitcoin, we're now back over 100. We're like at 102 globally on the M1 index. We pulled up another chart today. Can we skip to the difficulty chart? You've heard me say a couple of times, there we go. You've heard me say a couple of times that there's been more mining coming on. Let's go 3 months. Yeah, there's been more mining power coming on. Well, notice over on the right-hand side of this chart, starting right about there, right? In late October, we started seeing some jumps in difficulty. Now, jumps in difficulty occur when there's more processing power on the network, whether it's improved hardware or an increased number of miners. Probably an increased number of miners, because I haven't seen anybody doing anything really revolutionary in hardware lately to pick up widespread adoption. So we're definitely seeing more miners back online.
Do you think it's because of Bitcoin for Wi-Fi?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're anticipating
Yeah.
load. Yeah. And so most recently, again, we've had just another spike here in the last few days. So there has been more mining power coming into the network. But, you know, if the price doesn't firm back up, how long will those guys stay active? It's hard to say. Can we look at volatility? Do you know where that one is?
Yeah.
As you might be surprised, volatility is actually massively huge because it's measured across 30 days as opposed to across the last couple of weeks. Last couple of weeks it hasn't been so bad, but the 30-day number is monster because of that big spike that we had all the way up to 500. But it's calmed down quite a bit now. That's going to change quite a bit across the next couple of weeks, barring some more wackiness. One of the other things that we look at periodically when there's any action is the venture capital slide. And this week there was a deal. There was a deal. Align Commerce from out of San Francisco picked up 12.5 million. That's their Series A round. What's interesting about this, two things. Number one, notice that first name on the investor list. This round was led by Kleiner Perkins. That's Kleiner Perkins' first foray into blockchain and Bitcoin investment. And if you don't know Kleiner Perkins, they're one of the best-known Silicon Valley-based VCs. They invest in things like Google, stuff like that. You know, they've had a pretty good track record for calling it. Now, the other thing that's interesting about Align Commerce is it's actually really, they don't want to use the term, it's a remittances play. It's really a remittances play. And if you go to their website, you will not find a single mention, at least not on the lead pages, of the word Bitcoin or blockchain. Yeah, so it's behind the scenes. But that's been the only deal of note that's happened in this last week. It's actually the only thing that's happened really in the last 30 days, at least that's been picked up here. What else do we have?
What differentiates them? Why do they get 12.5 million? What differentiates them to everyone else that's already in the market?
I don't know. I didn't dig enough into their website to come up with that answer, you know. Considering where they're located, San Francisco, and it's around led by Kleiner, it may be a personalities thing, right? I did read some news coverage on it, but there was nothing in there that gave any insight as to what they were doing differently. All right, what else do we have? Here we go. What's happening with block size? Here we are. We're rolling in. December's right around the corner, and there's a bit of strengthening in the 8 play. It's up to 10.74%. BIP 100 still sitting right at 60%. There's just no movement going on here. Just no movement. I have no idea what's going to come out of this. We do have the Hong Kong event coming up here in the next week, I think it is, right? Supposedly that's another chance for everybody to get together and bash their heads together and come up with a solution for this. But you know, what I've been reading, nobody's got a handle on how this is going to play out. It looks like the status quo.
No news is bad news.
It's hurry up and wait is what it is.
Yeah.
And I think those are the big numbers worth talking about this week. I don't think there's anything else we need to do. Let's get on to your stuff.
All right, cool. Let's take a look at our topic for the day. Does anybody know who this guy is besides Hugh Jackman? Who's he playing? Jean Valjean. Yes. And just like all classic French literature, there's a case of mistaken identity. Right, it's so weird how French literature like always has like somebody who used to be somebody else, and they come back from the dead, or everyone thinks they're dead, or well, in the case of Jean Valjean, he was a criminal, right? He stole a piece of bread for he and his siblings, and then he did hard labor. Of course, when he came out, they gave him a passport, right, that showed he was a criminal, and he had to basically forge his identity, create a new passport, so that he become this guy, which was the mayor of the town, right? So they were people have been thinking about identity for a long time, and it's governments have been trying to codify it for a long time, and I think we're still trying to wrestle with the issues around, well, if you do something wrong, like, is it okay to forget about it, or do we want to create immutable records? You know, in modern times, you know, there's technology now that could create a immutable passport that shows that you're a criminal forever.
It's funny too, with a passport that you have to put your occupation. But
yes.
Nobody's like validating that. Like I put a different one every time.
Yeah, why do they need to know your application?
Occupation in a passport application?
No, when immigration.
Oh, during immigration.
Yeah, entry visa.
Yeah.
You always have to put in.
Yeah, why do they need to know your occupation?
In case you're a journalist.
In case you're a journalist.
Now that you're talking about this,
but they're not going to check. Right?
I had the New Zealand immigration actually did think I was somebody else.
Oh, really?
It took them a little bit of questioning and my fingerprints to find out it's not me. But until then,
Well, you are a shady-looking character too.
Yeah, until
I mean,
then,
you had a beard last week. I
didn't have a beard then. I came back with a beard though. But it's really funny until they found out it's not me. It took some like weird questions to answer, and it was kind of weird, and I was surprised because I thought they would have like sophisticated system, but at the end of the day, when you book a ticket, they just have your first and last name, and if your first and last name matches somebody else's first and last name,
Right, and they're on a watch list, then you're having a bad day, right?
So yeah, I was shitting my pants with all the questions that I got.
That's very suspicious behavior when you shit your pants. That's a dead giveaway.
But,
Well, you know, it's identity is kind of a weird thing because we want privacy, right? But we also want credit for our reputation, and identity and privacy are kind of diametrically opposed, and we're constantly trying to juggle those things in the real world. Like you'd want to rely on your good reputation, just and you know,
the
make you
interesting
distinct.
thing is that they were not happy that I'm in Bali. They just caught some criminals in Bali that were like an Indian mafia ring, and then they were like, "You're hiding something by being there."
It's like PayPal every time they book your.
This was New Zealand immigration?
New Zealand, and then, of course they thought that I was the other guy. But you know, when I show up, I'm like, you know, I'm living in Bali and all that stuff. And they didn't like Bali, the fact that I'm in Bali actually, which is a bit of a blow because you know, we're like working towards like painting Bali as like the place for paradise for digital nomads and all the stuff, and it's true. But then New Zealand goes up and tells me, you're just trying to hide something.
Well, you know, there.
That's why.
Well, that's what they thought at the beginning, of course.
Yes.
Pipeline from Colombia into the States.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I've never like been worried about stuff like that, but now I'm like, shit, I should probably watch out where I travel and what I.
Well, what you're complaining about though is the global immigration regime, right?
Yeah,
the global passport
totally.
regime, the you know, trying to control people's movements, and you know, you were born on this piece of dirt, so we're going to categorize you as something, and you were born on this other piece of dirt, so you can't work or you can't. You know, it's this control mechanism, you know, and it's.
Whereas money can just go wherever it wants.
Not anymore.
Well, that's changing.
Special kind of money, yeah.
Well, when you were just talking about filling out your occupation, do you remember the other question that's on that form?
How much money you bring?
Yeah, or you have bearer instruments in an amount greater than $10,000 US, or 10 million rupiah, or.
Yeah, but you don't need to bring any cash. You can take it out of the bank.
Well, yeah, I mean, well, they, you know, people have been stopped.
Trackable.
People have been stopped at the border with cash or gold, and if you don't claim it, then it's likely going to be taken from you if they find it. And you know, those drug sniffing dogs can smell cash as well. In fact, I saw on Product Hunt they had some sort of cash envelope for your backpack. Like it was this envelope that's like sealable. That's you know. That is smell proof.
So the dogs can't smell the cocaine on the nose.
Yeah, well they advertise it for cash, but I imagine there's some other things. You know,
On the nose. Not
Yes. Yeah.
one person.
Yes. But anyway, yeah, it's all part of identifying people and their movements, right? And you relying on your good reputation to be able to pass or not. I met it when I was in the UK. We were out at a party, and I was talking to this guy, and I said, "Oh, you should come visit the States." And he said, "No, I can't. I was a criminal before. I can't travel." I was like, "You don't say." But anyway, yeah, it's just interesting, right? So I'm going to play this little video for you, and it's going to set the stage for the rest of the kind of discussion. It's the second of a few. And what he covered previous to this was core identity, which is like your actual person, almost like your own private key, the thing that identifies your physical body, right? And there's a concept of primacy, which means that you should have control over that core identity, right? And then there's the concept of a persona, which is the identity that you put out into the world that you have control over, right? And you want to have control over that because, well, in different places around the world, different things are judged differently by different people. In some parts of the world, it's illegal to be gay, right? So you might want to have a persona on a gaymatch.com, but you don't want somebody else to learn that information because you can be judged for it. So I mean, it's I think it's a fundamental right, our control of our own identity, but it's in constant play, especially with all the technology that we use every day. So check this out, and we'll talk on the other side.
Late into the digital age, and how our modern Tom Baker uses a trusted identity. We call the digital representation of the core identity a core identifier, a unique digital key that identifies Tom as Tom. The principle of primacy is fundamental here. Tom is connected to his core identifier so that only he can use it. Because of this binding, only Tom is able to use his core identifier to create and manage his various personas. This binding between Tom and his core identifier must be enduring and unchangeable in order to place trust in the personas that Tom creates within the identity ecosystem. We call this immutable binding, and while the identity ecosystem has no need to know who is allocated a core identifier, it must have absolute trust in the binding process and that it is truly immutable. Once Tom has his core identifier, he can use it to create personas and also link it to any existing personas, such as his government tax persona or a credit card persona. Creating a persona will generate another identifier, a persona identifier, which may be derived directly from Tom's core identifier or from another of Tom's existing personas. In deriving a new persona from an existing one, Tom can choose which identifier attributes to inherit from that persona, which is privacy enhancing as it limits attribute exposure. Tom's personas need to be created with a one-way trust, ensuring that the consumer of a persona, or even the persona provider, is never able to go back up Tom's identity tree to derive Tom's core identifier and thus his core identity. The trust in a persona comes from three sources. First, from the immutable linking of Tom to his core identifier. Second, from the endorsement of the persona by the issuing organization. And finally, by the validation and binding of attributes to that persona by their authoritative source. So if Tom becomes a government employee, he takes his core identifier, which was issued by an organization trusted and approved by the government, and uses it to create his government employee persona. One of the attributes of this employee persona may be the level of his government security clearance. So in summary, what have we learned about personas? First, persona identifiers can be created by joining two identifiers. For example, a core identifier and an organizational identifier. Second, there can be as many or as few levels in an identity tree as required. Third, personas are derived from either another persona identifier or a core identifier, together with the related attributes, using one-way trust to ensure privacy. And finally, the trust in a persona is the combination of the trust in the relationship to the core identity, the organization identity, and the attribute provider, ranging from high trust all the way to no trust in, for example, the case of a self-asserted persona. In the next video tutorial, we will see how trust and persona interact to provide a privacy-enhanced identity ecosystem.
All right. So the takeaway there is this concept of a core identifier, which is the real trick. Like in the video, it's just a concept, but how do you do that? Right? They've done like retina scans and your fingerprint, and
It's like SSL for people.
right. Well, it's like
As I said,
I mean,
we have a central point. It's not the same.
Yeah, for the core identifier, though, it is. You would have the central point. That's the, but for
Yeah,
the
but
subsequent ones.
It was the nature, not some government
No, but for the core identifier, there has to be a central authority that verifies that identity. That's why it's like SSL for people.
Let's see. I guess it is. Yeah.
Well, I threw this slide up there because for Bitcoin, the core identifier is your public key, right? As far as Bitcoin is concerned, this is the core identifier for any funds that are in this address. And then this is the way that you prove that you are the owner of those funds, right? You combine those two things and you're able to prove your identity. But if somebody grabs these things, then essentially they're you, or they have the ability to spend the funds. So the tricky part is to, how do you attach your Bitcoin address to your physical person, right? And you guys probably, if you're doing online banking or you're, using, anything where you really have to trust your login, you're probably encountering the world's attempts to solve this problem. Your bank probably gave you a little token that you've got to enter in things into, and if you lose it, you got to call them right away. They generate a new core identifier every 30 seconds with some of these tokens. And our man Roberto Capodieci is involved with this device called a sound key, where it's not a number that you can lose. It's not a fingerprint or a personal core identifier like your retina. It is a noise that this device makes. I guess it makes, you remember those old modems when they would go and they were like, communicating? This would be something similar, although I don't think you actually hear it. It's passed through the headphones jack. But as long as you don't lose this particular hardware item, then that is your core identifier, right? And I think you have to enter in a PIN or something in order to get it to produce that sound, right? But it's just interesting, all of the ways that businesses are trying to tackle this problem and how they can run afoul. Do you guys remember when? How many people use an iPhone? Do you guys use the fingerprint scanner? Yeah. So a lot of people are bent out of shape about that because it links it to your actual physical person. Like it identifies your basically your DNA, your actual person. And a lot of people think that that's one bridge too far, and that that would give somebody who wanted to harm you based on your choices that were legal in one jurisdiction but not legal in another jurisdiction, for example.
Because they can prove that it was you.
Right.
Who used it.
Right. Exactly. So anyway, it's just something to think about. There's, most of us, we kind of have that idea that we're not doing anything wrong, so we don't have anything to hide, and it's convenient to just use the fingerprint scanner. But there have been quite a large range of things that have been illegal throughout the course of human history. I think it's in some parts of the earth today, it's illegal for women to show their face. I mean, it's pretty amazing. So
yeah, but is there an example where a government has gone after somebody from their traces online?
Well, I think that there was a politician in Malaysia who was outed as homosexual, and maybe it was because of some websites that he logged into or something. But he was I think he fled the country, and certainly his political career was over. Yeah, I mean it's kind of scary, and if you think about like all of the ways that people could take information out of context, right? Google, if you log into Google, Google knows exactly where you've been, right? And they know your search history, and there can be you could build a circumstantial evidence story that looks really suspicious. There was a data breach, and I think that there was a time when you could see the search history based on user ID for millions of Google users, and there was one user that had all these things like how to dispose of a dead body and how do you kill your wife, and and then they went and talked to the guy, and he was a writer. He was he was like a Hollywood screenwriter or something. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you never know. And especially, there's lots and lots of people in the United States that are in prison based on circumstantial evidence, and they get released 20 years later because they're able to do a DNA test. But circumstantial evidence is a bad thing, and I think the more we control our own data or how our actual identity gets associated with the things we do in the world, the better, right?
We can see about you now from the banners,
Yeah, you can see a little bit about me.
You can see your computer only from the banners. We can see what you have been searching for. And so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope there's nothing embarrassing here.
Something Disney mommy.
I saw PayPal in there.
When I lived in Boston, one of my roommates got a catalog for shoes that make you look like 3 inches taller. Oh man, I shouldn't know that. Poor guy. Anyway, okay, so what else have I got here? Oh, there's this concept of know your customer. When you move into the world of money, know your customer, KYC. If you ever had to take a picture of your passport or provide all kinds of information to your credit card or your bank, this is what's known as KYC, or know your customer. And it's, they're not being nosy, they're following regulation, right? They're required to do this by the various regulators and regulations that apply in the jurisdiction where they operate. And if they have any association with the US government, then they've got a lot more to do. There are some businesses that specifically exclude US customers because these KYC requirements are so onerous. And when I was in the payments industry, we had payments clients from all over the world, and I actually had to call up executives and ask them for their passport. You need to give us a copy of your passport, and I mean, it was never a good conversation. And they blamed me for being nosy, but it's really the regulators. If anything, if we get kind of wrapped up in some sort of criminal investigation and we're moving funds and we don't know who the funds belong to, it's like a big problem. In fact, some Swiss banks were fined hundreds of millions of dollars, if I'm not mistaken, because they didn't have the proper information about the people they were doing business with. So it's kind of a big deal. I think that we should catch people like actually doing stuff wrong and preserve everybody else's financial privacy, but that's not the world we live in right now. In fact, there's a big list of people and organizations that you're absolutely forbidden to do business with, at least from the United States government's standpoint. And it's the thing that you don't always think about is the humongous cost that creates for the businesses that are doing business in this space. And it really makes offering services to the 2 billion people that don't have banking services kind of out of reach. You have all these hoops to jump through, and that means you can serve fewer and fewer people, right? So
there's instances where this is absolute bullshit. Like Cuba, for example, because America's decided they don't like Castro regime,
right,
frozen them out of the international monetary system for the last 50 years.
Yes.
And for what?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a huge problem. I mean, has anyone ever had PayPal funds frozen?
Yeah.
I mean, there's more than one yes, I heard. I mean, it's a real, well, it's a hassle at best. It could be a real tragedy at worst. What if you can't make payroll because your funds are frozen? Yeah. And especially with we did a show on civil asset forfeiture a few weeks back, and when you combine civil asset forfeiture with the ability to seize funds, and it's kind of a bad combination.
It's surprising that hasn't improved over the years.
Where's the motivation?
What's up?
Where's the motivation?
I think it's only going to get worse.
Yeah, the
It has gotten better, man. Have you heard about
Government
this thing called
wants
Bitcoin?
more control,
Um,
I don't know.
there's also money laundering. Just the concept of money laundering is associated with these things. Anyone care to define money laundering?
getting money in an illegal way and doing something to it so it's
Money
like
Right,
they found it in
right.
a legal way.
Yeah, I mean that's the classic definition that I understand is, yeah, you made your money like, you know, because you were an assassin for hire,
Yeah.
and you want to make it look like you made that money with your dry cleaning business,
Yeah.
right? But actually, anti-money laundering laws span all kinds of things. Like, for example, traveling with more than $10,000 in U.S. cash is in violation of money laundering statutes in the states. So even though they haven't figured out that you've made your money in a nefarious way and you're trying to make it look clean, they just assume that you must be up to something shady, and they seize the money, and those are money laundering laws. Yeah, it's kind of draconian. There was, I don't have the link, but maybe I'll find it after the fact. Someone, I think Vice reported that there was more money seized by the U.S. government than was robbed in all of the burglaries and breaking and entering across the entire United States. More money was taken by the police department than the actual criminals.
Something
but-
wrong there.
I mean, it's kind of a sensational headline. I didn't look at the details, but
I think it's only in California.
oh
I
yeah.
think it's like in one particular area where like,
Still ridiculous. Though. It doesn't matter
it
if
is
it's one.
one.
I mean-
I'm not debating whether it's ridiculous or not. I'm just saying that it's not widespread.
Good business. They need a lot of money to make.
There's a great episode of what's that new show, the spinoff from the Daily Show, the weekly show with John Oliver. He does a whole show on civil asset forfeiture. It's excellent. So anyway, by the way, speaking of changing your identity, this is a story that we covered way back when, but one of the FBI agents that was investigating the Silk Road tried to steal Bitcoins, right? And he tried to change his identity. He tried to, kind of falsify his identity. And, there's all this talk about Bitcoin being good for money laundering and that, it's going to fund the terrorists. In fact, after Paris, that's exactly what they're saying. We'll get to that in a minute. But it's really a terrible choice. If you're out there, you're thinking about doing some money laundering, nothing works better than US $100 bills. You didn't hear from me, but that is the medium of choice, totally untraceable, good all over the world. And if you put it in a special thing you find on Product Hunt, the dogs won't smell it. But anyway, the blockchain, if they can ever associate your core identity with a Bitcoin address, then they can see everything that you've done, right? And if they know some of the people you deal with, if they can get a few addresses, they can kind of de-anonymize your whole cloud of finance. So, I've often thought that maybe Bitcoin, possibly is not a good thing because it is a tracking mechanism. It's an unimpeachable tracking mechanism. And although it's pseudonymous, if they ever associate your person with your Bitcoin address through your Apple fingerprint, then, then they can see everything that's going on. So speaking of clamping down on Bitcoin, did you guys see this headline? EU clamps down on Bitcoin anonymous payments to curb terrorism funding. So, it's terrible what happened in Paris. 129 people died. It's tragic, but more people will die from run-ins with hippopotamuses than will die from terrorism this year. And it's, in my opinion, it's certainly not worth giving up the incredible benefit to society that Bitcoin represents to use terrorism as an excuse to do this kind of thing. I think is really, it's despicable and disingenuous and bad for society. But no crisis should go to waste. And the French government wants to amend their constitution. I mean, it's really.
Didn't pass on Thursday.
For what?
Well,
Basically, seize anything they want.
right. They want more powers. They don't want to have to get a warrant before they search your apartment.
So basically,
Similar to-
from 9/11.
Similar to the Patriot Act.
Yeah, basically, like nothing that has happened over the last decade has made any sense to anyone over the world.
Yeah.
And doesn't one of the colors of the French flag represent liberty, égalité, fraternity? So maybe they have to change the flag. Maybe take that liberty thing off. Yeah.
Not very much.
Anyway, stay tuned. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Bitcoin as things get more tense. I mean, it feels like the world is turning into this like kind of a dangerous place right now. There's lots and lots going on, and you just wonder how the reactions are going to come, and what they're going to think about Bitcoin. Another point to make about identity is campaign finance reform in the States. There's this big push to get the money out of politics, because essentially with this Citizens United Supreme Court decision, they decided that a corporation is a person, and a person has free speech. And so if you have a super PAC with hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, they can donate to a campaign because of free speech.
Corporations are people too.
That's right. That's right. And it's quite interesting to think about this in the context of identity, because corporations and the people that want to affect politicians through the lobby are attempting to create an identity out of a non-person. They want to create a core identity of a legal construct, a legal fiction, and then use that to bribe politicians, essentially. And it's interesting because I believe in financial privacy, and I don't think that they should be meddling in who spends money on what. But that position is at odds with wanting to get the money out of politics. And I think that this ACLU wants to come up with a public pool of money that gets spread evenly across all the candidates, so that they only spend, if they collect so many taxes from the U.S. citizens, they put it all in a pot, and then everybody who's running gets the same amount of money, and that's their plan. But I don't know what the real solution is.
No, every single U.S. election, the candidate with the most pool of money is won. Every single time.
So that means Donald Trump is gonna win.
I saw some headline that
that's going to be an awesome day. Like just see people go crazy.
Exactly.
and they did say that this next campaign season will be a $1 billion campaign. Someone will spend more than $1 billion.
Let's just auction it off.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I don't know. How do they do it in other parts of the world? Do they have a?
It's like that in the UK. Yes, that's for sure.
Yeah. You guys have like 90 days.
We're still a year out for the actual election. It's ridiculous.
Oh, yeah.
Crazy.
It's
It's
like
like a circus.
at least in India, they don't do it like openly. Like there's a cap.
Is that the
There's
answer?
a cap, but they do the same thing. They like funnel black money into like basically what we've been talking about.
Right.
They funnel it in like through NGOs. Lots of kids getting pencils and lots of people getting rice.
Maybe lots of donations show up in the Clinton Foundation
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Suddenly there's like, oh, we got like $5 million for malaria. It's like clean money.
Yeah.
Things like that happen, but
Well, take a look at how much Hillary Clinton makes per speech, and you can kind of scratch your head a little bit. Yeah, I think it's the kind of thing that happens. Really, it's a function of too much power concentrated into a small space. The United States is the largest economy in the world. You've got 318 million people sending about half their income to some form of government. Most of it going to a few hundred people in Washington, D.C. that can do pretty much whatever they like. I get to vote, I get a choice between two people every 4 years, and otherwise they're just taking half my income. I mean, I don't know. I think we can do better.
And we don't even have socialized healthcare or anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
European
yeah, we
At least
don't.
we can
We
do
don't.
that. Socialized childcare, you know what I mean?
What we get are,
Still
you know what we get for that, Mona? We get license plate readers that can give me a parking ticket like more efficiently. Yeah.
And what?
Some stealth bombers.
Yeah.
And bombers that sometimes come over the Super Bowl for fun. You've seen that, or like I went to the
What's that?
Rose Bowl and they had like a couple stealth bombers. I'm like, how much did that cost?
Yeah, I saw some headline recently where they took one of the programs, like one of the fighter jets, and they said if they would have like never had this program, you know, it was one of those jets that came into being and was retired before it was ever used, like, and they could have given like $600,000 to every, you know, child under 10 years old for their college, something like that. I mean, it's kind of nuts. But anyway, so. You know, Bitcoin is a little bit different when it comes to donations. You know, you could put your Bitcoin address up on a billboard in Times Square, and anybody can send you money anonymously, right? And in the States, what's that?
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
You have to pay quite a bit for the billboard.
I think the billboard would be a little bit expensive. It might not pay off.
Was there someone in the States to do that at a football game? Like send money on broke?
Yeah,
QR code?
Mom send Bitcoin. Yes, that did happen. I talk about that gag in the 101 class that we do. But I thought this was interesting. You know, for a long time, the whole Bitcoin community was like spamming Wikipedia, like, why don't you accept Bitcoin donations? Why don't you accept Bitcoin donations? And Jimmy Wales was always demurring, and they finally turned it on. You can actually make donations to Wikimedia with Bitcoin. But check this out. You click on this button, and they've got to collect all your information.
Well,
What?
what's wrong with that?
Well, I don't know. Let's talk about it. I mean, I wish there was just a QR code and I could send them money and like forget about it. But I guess
I don't think you can blame Wikimedia for this one. It's powered by Coinbase. Coinbase is doing this because of their KYCs.
Yeah. Interesting.
Because Coinbase is one of the most restricted about that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Where's Coinbase regulated?
Yeah, they're in the bit license. All right, that was the last little example I had. Anybody have any like thoughts about identity or run-ins with identity or ways you wish things were different? Anybody use Bitcoin for financial privacy?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Johnny Fresh has a good example of that. He was in Toronto.
What was that one?
Was he running a certain type of business?
Oh, maybe.
What happened with One Name IO?
One name?
Yeah.
One name. I don't know. Did something happen with anti-money laundering or money
I
movement?
think their goal is to sort of put all identity
Oh, well,
accounts into
we
one.
talked about One Name a few weeks back, and it was in the context of they do a DNS system, right? Domain name,
Something like that.
right?
No, the domain name was
It's Bitcoin.
There's
Yes,
some-
So was One Name like a identity
One Name
management?
IO was some sort of identity thing, and it didn't
Or
go.
like a one password.
What about Namecoin?
Yeah, one user.
Namecoin was, I think, some sort of attempt to do that, although they had a security breach.
Identity, Ethereum, they're doing something with identity because they're trying to do the whole.
Yeah, they're doing something in conjunction with Microsoft around identity. Well, it's always been a problem. I mean, think about single sign-on,
Yeah.
mean, like- or we still use the internet, 15 years later, and we're still like logging into every different site.
It's still the single most common way to identify yourself is Facebook for signing.
Yeah, well,
That's-
back in the original Facebook days, they only offered Facebook to universities, and you had to have that university's domain in order to have an account. And it was the first one to kind of really try and attach the identity to the actual person. That was, I think, a crucial strategic move back in the day.
That was the argument when Stellar launched, and they decided to distribute the coins based on people creating accounts and they basically allowed Facebook to identify that it's a Facebook account only, to identify it's you, and others were complaining, why not Twitter account, why not LinkedIn account? And they're saying that they thought that Facebook was the single most adopted system online to identify yourself. Fair enough, but then they had decent amount of people who were using fake Facebook accounts to create an account just because they want to get the stellars out and then sell them afterwards. So
it's a problem we haven't solved
it's
yet.
not, yeah, but yeah.
There's one bit rated, you know.
Bit rated.
I don't know, is it still active? But it's
It's an attempt to solve this problem.
Yeah, where you can connect your Facebook, Twitter, blah 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 accounts even in Bitcoin Talk, and then people can rate you, and then you have an algorithm, which is if you make a lot of automatic accounts with a bot, then and you take this group, it will be unattached. Then if you make a graph, you see a bunch of points.
Viewers, and they're persecuting them too.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
Yeah,
I saw that.
they're persecuting them.
Lord, yeah, receivers, yeah.
Isn't that
And for learning for living fake,
like fraud?
What's
Or
the-
Yeah.
what's the-
I don't know. I read an article, but there was also another very interesting article of this chick in San Francisco who created a fake company and bought fake everything, fake reviews on Facebook, fake reviews on TripAdvisor,
fake
fake
fingernails?
followers, fake. She bought somebody to go, not somebody, a bunch of people to go in front of a video camera and be like, I had an amazing view. Yeah, fake testimonials. She got somebody dressed up as a doctor to go up and say, whatever,
Yeah.
this is great products in this.
And then what did she do with it?
Yeah.
And she didn't expose it all, and said, nowadays you could, if you pay yourself.
Oh, it was like a journalist kind of.
Yeah, as a journalist, she said if you pay your way to
You have
read
enough
it.
money.
Yeah, and it's crazy. And then I also noticed on BTC Jam, which is peer-to-peer lending for Bitcoin. I tried it out, and I had quite a few people who didn't pay, and all of them were identity theft.
Really?
So basically,
So
somebody
you're lending to people.
you're lending to people,
They
and
have a good
then
reputation, but it's not the
they
person.
have good reputation, but it's technically not them,
It's
right?
right?
And what they've done, what the people have done is they have stolen, let's say they stolen your identity, and then when they get your email, then easily they can get access to your Facebook.
Okay.
Sometimes you use your same
So they
password.
steal
which
someone
people
else's
still do.
reputation.
Yeah, they steal your reputation. They make an account out there. They say, "This is amazing me," super clean record,
Mhm.
and pull out 10 bitcoins or whatever, and then it'll be found again. And I don't
Yeah.
know, it's a problem, but yeah, you're right. I don't know when it's going to be solved because
It's kind of a bummer.
yeah.
I had an idea about these Google glasses.
Yeah.
So that your eye must have a private key, unique, like your
Iris.
and then with this eye, with your eye, with the iris or whatever, just to use it as a private key where
Oh, so that's like a password.
Yeah. No, but because the fingerprint is very easy to you can very easily take the fingerprint for anybody.
You don't want them
They
to
can
capture
take your
your address.
Yeah. And then it's like Minority Report where they like steal people's eyeballs and hold it up to the scanner. All right, guys, listen, we're out of time. If you want to view this after the fact, you can check out our YouTube channel. I'll put that in the show notes. Where are the show notes? I always attach them to the actual event. So I'll put all the links in the actual event in Facebook. Don't forget about Twitter, Bitcoins in Bali.